No one should forget Batman Arkham Asylum's impressive beginning, and if Rocksteady's marketing team gets its way, no one should forget the explosive ending that has been continually promised in Batman Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight is the trilogy ender of the main series, closing the curtains on the universe Arkham Asylum and Arkham City so lovingly crafted. With all of Gotham to explore and the Batmobile's keys newly fastened on the Caped Crusader's utility belt, does Arkham Knight find ways to teach an old bat new tricks? Let's find out here in this review of Batman Arkham Knight.
I am ready to face your final challenge.
It's the toughest yet.
Arkham Knight's biggest and most advertised addition is the iconic Batmobile. It's part tank and part super armored rocket car that can easily switch between modes at the press of a button. Wayne Enterprises doesn't make crappy off-brand junkers. The Batmobile, regardless of stance, controls well after some adjusting. It shoots where the crosshairs are during combat and drives as well as you steer it during chases. Drone fights are simple fun, but attempt to overwhelm the player with sheer numbers, which can either lead to fast-paced, tense on-wheels action with its fisticuffs-inspired multiplier, or a never-ending onslaught of tanks, depending on the context. Driving is fairly standard and intelligently incorporates Batman's expansive repertoire of moves, from combat takedowns to ejecting straight into flight. Slight amounts of jank pop up here and there, but for the most part, the Batmobile behaves like a billion-dollar tank should. You'll be able to overcome some of the jank because of all the mandatory Batmobile driving that Batman is continually pushed into. The Batmobile's inclusion isn't negative, nor is driving it. It's just that its forced inclusion during the first half of the game reeks of unwarranted insecurity on Rocksteady's part and tampers with the overall pacing of the gameplay. Scattered missions here and there, along with general optional travel via Batmobile, would have been optimal. Cramming it into nearly every early mission makes it easy to give the car as a whole a knee-jerk, overly negative reaction. As the mandatory Batmobile sequences start evening out, Arkham Knight finally starts delivering exactly where you think it should: the combat and the stealth. Asylum's Counter-Strike introduction was inarguably perfected in Arkham City. The brutal and mesmerizing rhythm of punching, countering, and using gadgets has been maintained and improved here in Arkham Knight, along with the game's incredibly responsive and easy-to-learn controls. It's hard to improve upon perfection, but Rocksteady has done their best to add plenty of new twists on the classic, oft-borrowed, and never perfectly imitated concept. Enemies have a few new features like being coated in electricity, and come in a few new forms like the medic and blade-wielding tank. As these obstacles carefully layer themselves in turn layers in more complexity into the confrontations. The strategy of adding more and more checks and balances keeps you on your toes, since fights have enough variability to ward off stagnation and constantly give the player the feeling of trying to master something new. While the amount of different enemies to worry about may be overwhelming to some, Rocksteady has done a phenomenal job of adding to the fisticuffs framework while retaining what makes it the best in its class. Sneaking was sublime in Arkham City as well, but like the combat, has been built upon and made better here in Arkham Knight. New gadgets and enemy types do for the stealth what they do for the combat, add variability and another dimension to encounters to keep them from getting stale. A new enemy will require new tactics or a new gadget that makes preying on thugs from the shadows as thrilling as it ever was and consistently fresh. The aggressive and predatory nature of these encounters are the perfect way to balance out the brutal hand-to-hand combat and remain so in Arkham Knight. Both the stealth and combat are worthy of their own modes. This is where the challenge maps come in, or in Arkham Knight's case, where they don't come in. Arkham Asylum and Arkham City both had a plethora of challenge maps that stripped away the story in favor of a score-based mode that focused on combat or stealth. It was an efficient way to jump right into the gameplay, and it was gameplay worth jumping right into. Arkham Knight's challenge map offering pales in comparison, to the point where it just looks like Rocksteady plain forgot to include other maps. There are 4 incredibly easy combat maps, 4 Predator maps, and a handful of Batmobile challenges, which, let's be honest, aren't the main attraction as far as maps are concerned. For reference, Arkham City had 12 combat maps, 12 Predator maps, and 12 campaign maps with unique challenges for each of the 4 playable characters. Arkham Knight, despite sporting multiple heroes, restricts usage to Batman and Batman only. It's puzzling since there are arenas and other characters built right into the main game that Arkham Knight refuses to utilize for replay value. Everything is already sitting there on the disc, just begging to be patched in and properly utilized. Unless WB wants to be scummy and eventually charge money for this vital section of the game, there's no excuse for this mode to be this pathetically anemic. The meager amount of challenge maps are usually saved for those who have conquered the beefy story mode. Scarecrow is threatening to bomb Gotham with a fear toxin and is using a masked villain named the Arkham Knight to keep Batman at bay while Crane sets up Gotham for its impending doom. Speaking in any capacity about Arkham Knight's story is a spoiler minefield, so specifics will be omitted, but the multiple threads are juggled well for the most part. Stopping Scarecrow is consistently the simple main goal that usually intertwines with the mystery of the Arkham Knight's identity. I'm willing to bet that fans of Batman lore will quickly deduce who it is, along with anyone about halfway through the game. Even so, the mystery is good bait for long enough to hold interest, although it feels like his mysterious identity was something the marketing team propped up way more than Rocksteady originally intended. However, despite being solid for the most part, this specific thread is held up on a few deceptive bits of information. Plot twists that are held up by a few bent truths aren't the best twists, which slightly dampens the reveal. The final thread is the most difficult to talk about, but it's easily the most rewarding. Its inclusion is surprising and upheld well by its, well, I can't really go into any detail, but it's the best narrative string in the game. Its only downfall was its slight absence near the end. All of these elements come together in the conclusion that is a prime example of a climactic, memorable finale that doesn't succumb to the outdated necessity of having a huge endgame boss fight. Although, to be frank, I'm not sure I'd want another boss fight from Arkham Knight. Most fights here are limited to the Batmobile and range from mediocre to punishing and overly difficult. Their lackluster quality and uninspired setups made them feel like boss fights straight out of Arkham Origins, which I hope comes out as insulting as I mean it. Gotham is a huge, beautiful city filled with a striking attention to detail and the handcrafted care by dozens and dozens of skilled people. Combat always demands that you look badass and gives you the proper tools to do so. Stalking oafish thugs from the shadows allows your cunning and simple predatory nature to exude a similar rush as breaking a man's face with your bare fists. These individual pillars make up Batman Arkham Knight, but work at their top quality when working together, and they always are. Batman Arkham Knight is probably the weakest in the main trilogy, but offers an inspired last chance to be the Batman and save the night one last time. Batman Arkham Knight gets an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you everybody for watching, and my name is Michael Larry, and I'm signing off. Later.
In case you need to reach me, it's going to be a long night.
All units, we've got a 1033 in Sector 2. Missing patrol car. Unit 247. Suspected officer down.
Hey, Batman. Every damn time.
Thanks, Dick. I appreciate it.